Thank you very much, and I appreciate that you all came for this day. As Dr. Coleman mentioned, my interest is looking at gene by nutrient interactions. What does it mean? It means that every person is different, and how every person, what they eat, how they are metabolized based on their genetic makeup. But today we are going to talk about bone health, the same thing, but in relation to bone health. Bone health is very apt in winter. You stand up, like at least this part hurts, knee hurts, this hurts. So I thought that bone health is ideal for this season, at least in winter. It hurts. So we talk all about bone now. So from starting till end, it's all about bone, okay? So what is bone and what does it do? Some of these are very basic, some people might know, but I want to just refresh and reiterate that. So bone is actually a connective tissue, but the main function, what it does in body is it gives us support. Imagine without bone, we all look like, so we won't be able to walk, we won't be able to stand. So it provides support to our bodies, and it gives us some shape. Otherwise, we would look really weird. So, and then our internal organs like heart and other important organs, it protects that. Even our brain is protected by the skull, which is again a bone tissue. And all our ribs and all protect our internal organs. So bones are very important in that aspect. Then they also support muscles. So muscles are needed for all the work we do, and so they also support muscles. Like the muscles are anchored to the bone, and that is how we are able to move and do all our work. Even like speaking, all muscles are moving. So everything, bone is supporting that. And, it came now. One of the main things which bone does is it stores calcium and releases as needed by the body. So we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but body needs calcium for many purposes. You must have all heard that our milk is high in calcium and we need to drink it. Yes, that's true. But calcium is not just for bone. Calcium is needed for muscles, nerve impulses, proper functioning of heart, and a lot of other things calcium is needed. Bone is one of the main functions, but everything else is needed. So bone, what is it? It is acting as a reservoir. Let's say I'm here and the walls are made of some calcium-rich food, and suddenly I'm low energy, I need food, I just take it from there and start eating. That's similar to that. If the blood is low in calcium, it starts pulling it from the bone because it needs some calcium in the blood all the time. So, and then bones, the hollow part of bone, or which we call marrow, they actually produce blood cells. So, red blood cells carry energy throughout the body, and white blood cells help us fight infections. So bone is so important. It is the inner structure which produces blood cells. So outer layer, inner layer, everything is very important for us. So why should I worry about bone? Okay, but bone is not like a rock which just stays, Bone is a living tissue. It can become weaker if you don't care for it, okay? So in general, what happens is you deposit calcium when you're growing, but after 20s, you literally don't deposit calcium. It sort of stops, and then you grow. So you might think that, oh, my bone has enough calcium. Why should I worry about it? If I don't take enough calcium, how does it matter? But the problem is, like I mentioned before, if there is not enough calcium in the blood, it starts taking it from the bone. So bone becomes weaker. So to keep the bone as strong as it is when you were in 20s, 30s, you need to take enough calcium so that it doesn't have to take it from the bone. You know, if you're taking diet, you're taking milk and other supplements, then your calcium is enough in your body. So it doesn't need to take it away from the bone. So bone will remain strong. And bone naturally becomes weaker with age. So we have to work for it. We have to ensure that we take calcium, we also take vitamin D. We talk a little bit in the later slides. And we all know broken bones can be very, very painful. And what happens, the bones are weaker, then there are more fractures because they are not able to hold the weight. Like you can imagine if you are, the whole body's weight is dependent on your just weaker bones. So they are not able to carry your heavy weight. So they start breaking very easily. And of course, they affect the whole quality of life. You're not able to walk and you start avoiding, oh, I don't want to bend, I don't want to do because this hurts. So therefore, bone health has a very important role. We need to pay attention to bone health. And I forgot to tell, if you have any question between, please stop and we can discuss and we can talk about it. Okay? Any question, please feel free to ask. So like this, is this pointer? Yeah, no, I found it. Thank you. So what happens is, as the person growing, the calcium gets deposited, the bone is going stronger and stronger. So by 20s, this is age in years, and this is the bone mass or bone strength. So as you're growing older, if you are eating well and you're physically active, maintaining it well, then it goes here. Males are a dotted line and females are the strong line. And then slowly, it'll go a little bit, but it's not as bad. But initially, if we don't keep up with it, then you see that the whole line is lower. And of course, osteoporosis, we talk a little bit about later. It's one of the bone problems. So you'll see that how much difference it is. So the bone mass becomes less, and the bone is not able to withstand the weight. So it is estimated that even 10% increase in bone mass at childhood or by 20 can actually reduce the risk of fracture in the later adult life by 50%. So it makes a lot of difference. So we talk a little bit about the major bone problems which can happen. One is back pain, which is winters they get worse, and most of the time it is the back, which bursitis. So what happens, between each joints, you have something called bursae, which is like a liquid, and that becomes inflamed, or that becomes problematic. Then what happens is that all joints start hurting. And so that is one of the problems. Gout. Gout happens because there is a lot of uric acid in your blood. So what is uric acid? Is like in your purine-rich foods or organ meats, and then beer, fructose, high fructose corn syrup, rich drinks, fructose, nowadays sodas, and everywhere you have high fructose corn syrup. So those, once in a while drink is not a problem. When it becomes too much. Remember, all this is when you have too much. So what happens that this molecule called uric acid becomes too much in the body, and when it becomes too much, it forms crystals like structure. Imagine when you put too much sugar or anything in liquid, it starts thickening, something like that. And those things start depositing between joints, and they hurt, So mainly it starts at the toes, and then it spreads to other parts of the body. So these are all very painful. Like, imagine like some glass piece like sticking between the joints. So it's like that. Low bone density is basically the bone is getting weaker and weaker because slowly the calcium or the lining is going off and it's not able to withstand the weight of the body. Paget's bone disease is again where, how do I explain? The outer lining of the bone. Okay, I missed one point. Let me go back a little. In your bone, there is an outer lining, set of cells, and there are inside lining. So there are some problems of the outer lining and some of the inner inside cells. Imagine this as a tube which has outer lining and inside there are some cells, right? So Paget's is actually inside the cells. So usually your bones will become weak and you will not know, and only doctor can diagnose that. Of course, most of this can be told by doctor, but if your big toe starts hurting, so we can have some idea that it may be gout because that is where it starts. Or bursitis is when your knees and elbow, they start hurting, you are not able to move properly. But Paget's usually is a little bit difficult to detect. Osteoarthritis. Osteoarthritis is the same, similar to bursitis, but in that liquid, so all our bones, wherever the joints are there, there is a liquid. So if there are two bones like this, there is a liquid in between. So it helps. So imagine there is no liquid, then they start eating each other. So that is osteoarthritis. So basically, bursitis, the liquid is there, but it becomes inflamed. But in this case, the liquid goes off. That usually with age, it thins a little bit, but in general, osteoarthritis, and that is usually with age. Most of the people starts a knee, knee joints are hurting. We can't climb stairs or something like that because it's basically rubbing of two bones. So osteoporosis. So basically, our bone is like a honeycomb. It's like, So there are smaller holes, it is stronger. But what happens in osteoporosis, which says pores in the bone? Osteo is all about bone, and porosis means pores. So the holes become larger. So there is more like more spaces in between. So that is the problem in osteoporosis. Rheumatoid arthritis is similar to where the liquid between the bones becomes inflamed, but rheumatoid arthritis can happen at any age. It's basically an autoimmune disease. What autoimmune disease means is, remember I talked about WBCs, which are cells which help fight us infection. So sometimes our own cells, body thinks that they are foreign in body, and these WBCs start killing them. It can happen at any age. Usually if the young child or someone has a rheumatoid arthritis, by the time they become adolescent, it goes away, but sometimes it can come back. But otherwise, rheumatoid arthritis can happen at any age. And it is triggered by stress and other factors, but mostly nobody knows the cause because our own body cells are thinking our own cells as enemies. They start, like if you have a fever or if you have a cold or infection, our bodies, WBCs think that there's a foreign body and we have to attack it. So you get fever and then they attack it and then they try to remove the foreign body from our body. That is a natural mechanism, it always happens. In this case, even though the other cells are also very healthy, but somehow body thinks that they are foreign bodies and they start killing them. So autoimmune disease, both lupus and rheumatoid, they usually affect joints, and it can be sometimes so worse that the fingers are all bent, and it starts with joints but then slowly affects the whole bone, and it can be really, and these people have like it's starting attacking his own body, so they become really weak because they are low in their cells and all. Scoliosis, I don't know whether you heard of scoliosis. It's like the backbone, it is like a curved, it becomes curved. Sometimes it's the way we sit, and sometimes the way we carry the things like heavy loads or something. So it can happen, the scoliosis. And I didn't talk about some other like bone cancer or something. I'm not talking about them here, but there are some other more complicated diseases which can happen with the bone. Besides, rheumatoid arthritis can affect some children, but mostly what is seen in children is rickets, which is due to vitamin D deficiency. So most of these, the other side is adults, but the rickets can happen in children. It usually happens because they don't have enough vitamin D in our body. So this is how it looks like. Normal healthy bone, it looks like, the pores are smaller. So you see that? And then in osteoporosis, these holes are becoming bigger and bigger. So it is losing strength, soul cells. Any questions so far? Clear? Okay, now what are the factors which can affect gender? Women are more prone to these bone diseases usually. Can anybody tell why? Yeah? Estrogen. Yes, estrogen. So estrogen is protective, and it can, but postmenopausal women then, but by then the damage has been done. So usually, no, estrogen actually is protective. I'm sorry. Postmenopausal women are more this thing. So that is why we say hormone replacement therapies for postmenopause, so that the estrogen you give and it keeps them active. But in general, women are more prone to bone diseases. Size, if a person is small in size, then also they are more prone to bone-related problems. Race and family history, Caucasians, Asians are at higher risk for bone diseases than others, osteoporosis and all, than other ethnicities or races. And if you have family history in your family, if someone had osteoporosis or osteoarthritis, your chances of getting are slightly higher. Amount of calcium in your diet. I have another slide about calcium, so I'll talk about that later. Physically active. How much physically active you are, that also makes a lot of difference, because your bones are, I'm trying to think about it. It's like a machine. When you keep oiling and it keeps running, it'll run. It'll work very well. So it's somewhat similar situation. Tobacco, alcohol, they all reduce bone strength. So that can be a problem. And hormone levels, actually estrogen is protective. And eating disorders like nervosa, bulimia and all, they can actually cause, because of the, where they eat but they try to vomit everything, about eating disorders? Yeah. So then they're not getting proper nutrients, basically. So, and certain medications, like if someone is undergoing cancer treatment or something else, then those can have side effects where the medications for cancer or other problems, they can have side effects as weakening the bone. So we have to talk about nutrition. And so the key one is calcium. So as I mentioned, that calcium is very important, not just for bone strength, but also it's important for other functionings in the body. So we need to maintain certain levels of calcium. So the main calcium main sources are milk, dairy product, of course the other dairy products, cheese and others. Then green leafy vegetables are good sources. Sardine and salmon, they are all good sources. Vitamin D. What vitamin D does, it helps in calcium absorption. So even if you take calcium, if you don't have vitamin D, then you may not be able to absorb well. So that's why having vitamin D is. Vitamin D deficiency is now so much prevalent, so much prevalent. Can anybody tell me why? Because sunlight helps in the, making the vitamin D active. So that then it can help calcium to be absorbed well. So most of the people, it's really surprising that even the places where there is a lot of sunlight, vitamin D deficiency is there. Like tropical countries like India itself, there is a lot of vitamin D deficiency. Because even though the sunlight outside, but how many people are actually walking outside, or how many people, they're all sitting inside and they're all traveling by cars, everybody. I mean, progress is good, but there's some, so still they don't have that much exposure to sun as is needed.
Is there a recommended supplement dosage for vitamin D and calcium?
Sorry, I couldn't understand, I didn't hear.
Is there a recommended dose
of vitamin D?
calcium
Calcium supplements.
Calcium and vitamin D?
So they all depends upon, the question, the question is that, is there a recommended dose for calcium or vitamin D intake?
Well, I'm post-menopausal, so address it to that.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
I mean, I'm 74, so.
She's asking about.
Oh, you'll ask me later. Okay. There is actually recommended intake. Yeah, there is a calcium recommended intake and vitamin D too, but we can talk about it. And then magnesium. Magnesium also helps in the, oh, sorry.
Does sunscreen that you apply to protect yourself from sun rays, does that block vitamin D absorption?
Sorry, I can't hear properly. Sorry.
If you're using sunscreen to protect your skin from sun rays, does that allow vitamin D to be absorbed or does it block it?
No, it does. So the question is, if the sunscreen is, we use sunscreen, does that block vitamin, like the absorption of, or the exposure to sunlight? Yes, it does block some part, yeah, yes.
Totally, but does some still come through? Does it block it totally, or does some vitamin D still come and be absorbed?
I didn't understand
Can
who.
some vitamin D still be absorbed?
I think there is a difference what type of sunscreen you use, yes. But the other problem is that sunscreens we usually use because to avoid skin cancer, right? So that is why those who are more prone to that. So I think Martin can help. Martin, do they still get some vitamin D?
Well, I mean, it blocks the production of vitamin D in the
Right,
skin.
because it's not
And
exposed.
basically, if you use a typical, let's say, factor 30,
Yeah,
there's almost nothing that goes through.
yeah. It depends upon what
So
type
it's
of,
part
you know.
the reason why we have a vitamin D deficiency problem, because we're getting so paranoid about sunlight.
I know, because of the skin cancer, this thing, we like SPF, we have SPF numbers on there, depending on that. If it's higher SPF number, then practically it's not, no sun rays are going inside. If it's a lower one, then it goes. So some vitamin D can be made because it's exposure, how much sun rays are going in. Physical activity, sedentary activity is good. So, but when we are talking about activity, we are not talking about, okay, cooking, I'm walking and cooking, that is really, it's called non-exercise activity, basically. But when we are talking about literally walking for the sake of exercise, walking. And moderate to vigorous physical activity is good. So in this, you can do a weight-bearing activity. which can be dancing, but again, you have to see your fitness level, how fit you are, or start at the lower, at a smaller, like whatever lower level and slowly go up. Then aerobics, hiking, jogging, they all come under high impact. But we can start with low impact, elliptical training, low impact aerobics, or stair-step machines, or just fast walking or walking outside, that's all. And so those all help. And then some muscle strengthening exercises like lifting weights, weight machines, or standing, or just standing on your toes for some time. That is the simplest thing we can try. So those, and then if you want flexibility and balance, yoga and Pilates are really good. And they all are important for bone health. So now we are coming to genes. So the other physical activity diet, you can modify, you can make changes. But this is something you would like to know how it affects you. So we know that bone mass is strongly affected by genetics or heredity. So if in family we have more people with osteoporosis or osteoarthritis, then your chances of, our chances of getting it are higher than others. And if it was one gene or something, it takes a long time, but once the gene is discovered, it is easier to have a treatment. But bone mass is affected by multiple genes. So generally, bone mineral density is affected by so many. I just bolded one because I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Osteoporosis, so many genes have been shown to be associated or linked to the increased risk for osteoporosis. Similarly, for osteoarthritis, for gout. So these all have genetic basis. So basically, if your family has it or you have specific genetic variant. And then, so our research is basically looking at how do we find these genes? What are the variants? And if somebody has those variants, can we help them? Like, can they take some dietary difference or increase in their nutrient or something to little bit overcome? You can't overcome completely, but will it help? So that is what we are looking at. So how do we look at it? So how many people know polymorphism or genetic variants? Okay. So basically what I mean is, so genome sequence is like ABCD, like imagine like an alphabet, okay? So let's see a word, just take the word alphabet, ALPHABET, okay? It makes a word. Let's say one of the letter, we change it. L becomes P or something. So the thing has changed, right? So similar to that, we have several they are called nucleotides. And our genome sequence is made of that. In between, there is one nucleotide changes, okay? Most of the time, those nucleotide changes don't have major effects, but sometimes they can. So like in vitamin D receptor, there is we call it polymorphism signal. So if you have a certain polymorphism, so when you have some, I tell you B, 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 B. What does it mean? Like if you have that, the L changes to something else, okay? Alphabet or, so similarly, if you change that, and a person who has had the change, if they take more than 800 milligrams of calcium, then they will have higher or lower bone mineral density. So let's say I have some genetic variant or one of my nucleotide has changed. So if I take same as everybody, it might not help me at all. I might have to take much more calcium than other people because I already have this change in my nucleotide. So similarly, let's say if someone is having certain type of change and they take very high caffeine intake, so they may have, like myself and Kendra is my student. Myself, we both take some 300 milligrams per day caffeine. But if I have that nucleotide change or that alphabet change, then I may be having at higher risk for bone loss than she is, because I have that variant. So that is why knowing what my variant is will at least I know that, oh, I control coffee. I shouldn't be drinking too many caffeine drinks, or I drink only one per day and not more than that. So that is what we are trying to do. What we are trying to do is put together these nucleotide changes. We call it nucleotide, that alphabet changes. And if I have 10 nucleotides, maybe I should, nucleotide changes, then maybe I shouldn't be drinking coffee more than a cup per day. Yeah.
So a person, as they grow older, can have these changes and not even know it? Like you could end up starting with a capital BB and end up with a little b and not know it?
Yeah, if you, some of these changes manifest after a longer time. Not every, like you won't know like within.
You really don't know if you should be drinking that much coffee or not.
No, there's some cases actually we know certain nucleotide changes we already have. They have been proven, like we should, if you have this nucleotide change, then you should not drink so much coffee.
How do you know if you've had that nuclear change?
How do we know?
How does a person, just a regular Joe, know that?
No, that is true. You have to send in a DNA and then we can look it for you. Yeah. Or, have you heard of 23andMe? They do it and then they give you, or we are doing in our here also, we only do scientific purposes, but
So
we
can
do.
find out, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Actually, I have my cards out there. If you write to me, I'll tell you what's that. 23andMe, actually, every December time, they have a 50% off sale also. I mean, it's $200. It's not cheap. It's not $200. It's not cheap. But in 50% off, they give you for $100, and they tell you all the important markers. They call it genetic markers, genetic variants, or they are polymorphisms. They all are similar. So you can get it done, yeah. So you can get the markers done. But if you know certain markers or variants, they have been shown to cause bone loss or bone increase. So if you know that, then you know what changes you can make in nutrition-wise and physical activity-wise. Don't have to change it overnight, but slowly you can make the change. So just want to talk a little bit, I can't resist, a study what we have done. This is in children basically. So we had a cohort, I usually work with minority populations. So we have this cohort of 800 children, they are all Hispanic ethnicity. And our main, remember I showed that VDR, which is a vitamin D receptor. That's why, so our plan is to, our hypothesis was that aim, that we want to identify those genetic variants which will cause a person or cause a child to have lower bone mass. And whether, so first our question was, what are the genetic variants which make someone have low bone mass? And the second one is, will these people, if they take in more calcium or more do more physical activity, will it help? Okay. So we found that those who had higher calcium intake actually had higher bone mass. These children were from 4 to 19 years of age. They were a wide range of age, and we looked at them and we found that. And we also found that, yes, that mainly that vitamin D receptor VDR, which I bolded, that gene was like prominent. And we found that that was linked to bone minerals. So some children who had that one single nucleotide change, some of them, they had low bone mass and others had actually higher. Interestingly, go ahead.
So the children that had the genetic variant, their bone mass also changed during the test? I
No,
mean,
no,
during
no,
the-
no, no. They had lower bone mass. So we looked at,
That's what I mean, I'm sorry, lower bone mass.
yeah, they had
And
lower.
when you gave them the calcium.
No, this is all, we didn't give them, but in our analysis, we looked at people who had higher calcium, lower calcium, and higher physical activity, lower physical activity. So we found that those who had the genetic variants, they were mostly helped by having physical activity. Those who did not have this genetic variant, physical activity didn't help them much.
Got it.
Their bone mass didn't change. But those who were actually, with the nucleotide, those who were actually having low bone mass, if they did more physical activity, this type of, their bone mass improved. But the others who didn't have, even if they did the same amount, theirs didn't improve that much. So it is good. So they are susceptible children. And if they did physical activity, it showed. So that's what I'm saying, that, yeah, we can have those nucleotide or the changes, but if we do physical activity or we take more calcium, then it can show up in your bone mass can improve. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to say here. The children who had these variants, which are known to be susceptible to loss of bone mass, they actually benefited the most from moderate to vigorous physical activity and increased calcium in. But those who did not have these genetic variants, they didn't show any change actually. So we still have hope. Mm-hmm.
So the ones who didn't have the variant and didn't show any change, they were good though. It's not.
They started at a good level. So they took the same amount of calcium intake, those started low. These people came up, but these people stayed here. But it gives us hope that those people who have the polymorphism, if they took, they can just improve, So I was reading somewhere recently that genes are not destiny. I mean, genes we can't change, but what we do with the environment around it, our physical activity, diet, and our lifestyle, we can improve how we can lifestyle. Genes we can't change much, but how they interact with our environment, that part we can change.
In this test, you didn't test the children whose genes were fine, quote. where
No,
they didn't
no,
do-
no.
But you did not, they didn't do any less activity, so you don't know whether if they decreased it, whether it would.
So all we were looking for is people who had those nucleotide changes and those who did not. And we were looking at their intake, their calcium intake, vitamin D intake and all. And then we were also looking at their physical activity. So we found that these people, if they had the same levels, their actually bone mass, after some time, this one improves, but this doesn't, they remain the same. So what I'm trying to say, but these people must have improved a little bit, but these people did the maximum change. So it doesn't mean that these people didn't benefit, but they didn't show that much change as the people who were already susceptible, they showed the change, more change. So if someone has the variants and they still follow proper increased calcium intake or increased physical activity, they can improve and they can bring it to the level which we need. So I guess. Oh, yeah.
Is there something as taking too much calcium or having too much calcium?
Yes. There is too much calcium, it can cause problems too. But usually if these people were already genetically susceptible, for them the calcium helped. But if it is too much, but I don't think a calcium intake, so when you have the RDA, you have the upper level of calcium, I don't think not many people go beyond that. Is that true, Martin? People can take too much calcium?
There's a clear risk. So we're talking about kidney stones.
Oh,
some
yeah.
people, again, susceptibility. We also talk about, for men, increased risk of lethal prostate cancer. So we don't just want to increase intake.
It's too much,
So
yeah.
if you really want to get it, it's just right.
And vitamin D, even though the toxicity is very rare, but if you take too much vitamin D, it can be toxic. But it's not so common, yeah.
Can there be also a cardiovascular risk?
Actually, low vitamin D is associated with cardiovascular risk, actually. There are many studies that vitamin D, because it is also involved in cholesterol transport and all, vitamin D helps with that. So low vitamin D can be, now new studies are coming up which are, they link it to increased cardiovascular disease risk.
But not calcium intake?
Again, that has to be too much calcium, yes, there is. The muscle spasms and all, it can happen. Because for cardiac muscle functioning, all muscle functioning, you need calcium. But if it is too much, then it becomes the other way around. And we also need a balance between calcium and phosphorus. So it becomes, the balance is upset. So too much calcium, yes, like Martin explained that it can be kidney stones too, and a heart muscle can also be affected, but that is usually a lot of calcium.
What's the best way to get calcium?
Supplements is a good idea. Diet, of course, diet is the best.
And what would be the best thing, like, you know, I'm not a real, I'd be interested to hear how you feel about milk, because there's mixed feelings about milk.
Okay, I'm biased. I love milk and I support milk. I'm really, and if people are concerned about the fat, they can take low-fat milk. But you know, when I'm old school, when we studied, milk and eggs were the best things, you know. But now, so a lot of people don't believe in milk, but I don't know, Martin may have a different this thing, but I am all for pro milk. Yeah, I'll just.
I have a friend that is really big on almond milk. I mean, she drinks her almond milk all the time, not with regular milk, almond milk. What do you think of that?
So, is she a vegetarian completely?
No, not at all.
Okay, then it should be okay. But the thing is that vitamin B12 only comes from animal foods. Like, I'm a vegetarian. If I move to soy milk or almond milk, then the source of vitamin B12, I don't have any vitamin B12 source. It only comes from animal foods. So if she eats meat and other things, I think it should be okay then, yeah.
I would just comment on that because I read labels with osteoporosis on board already. The almond milk has very little calcium per serving. The soy milk has a higher percentage of calcium.
But if it is not the only source, then it's okay.
If you add supplements, you have to
Yeah.
look at the labels and read brands and see, you know, are they, and remember what they're adding is not the whole food. You know, the calcium is already naturally present in the dairy milk, and so there's lots and lots of controversy about what's the best source. But in general, I think from the diet and
So if she's getting calcium from other sources, then I don't see anything wrong with the almond milk. But it has to be balanced. And again, coming back to my question, that I love milk. So milk is actually, I don't know, Martin also must have, we all studied that milk and egg are like ideal foods, you know. But now, because of the yolk contains a lot of cholesterol, there are some issues. So that is why people have stopped. The problem has become like they start eating eggs so much that they started getting some nutritional deficiencies like choline deficiency. So it has to be a balance. One egg is not bad. And milk also, I know whole cream milk. Oh, go ahead, Martin, you want to say something?
So I just want to put in a plug for dark green vegetables, which are a great source
Yeah.
of calcium. It's not either or, it's, as you say, a balance, because you haven't mentioned as much magnesium. We tend to get too much calcium in relation to magnesium, So it's all a balance. The other advantage of dark green vegetables is that they are rich in vitamin K.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
vitamin K.
really a bone vitamin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Vitamin K
whatever
also,
else
yeah.
you do, really eat your greens. And you do want to either chew them very carefully or at least, heat it a little bit because otherwise it cannot absorb vitamin K. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a good example how a balanced nutrition really hits all those important targets.
And I apologize, I said the milk backwards. The almond milk, most brands add more calcium than the soy milk brands. So I said it backwards, and I apologize for that. But again,
That's
it's
okay.
something that's added in. It's not an inherent nutrient in either of those products. The soy milk, you're gonna get more protein. Almond milk, you're not gonna get protein. So if you've got someone who's trying to do plant-based protein, that becomes an issue as well. But that's another talk and another day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you want those greens heated, you said, or chewed well.
You can wilt them, you can chew them like pesto. If you grind it up, that's good enough. But if you eat lots of greens, so collard greens, etc., those traditional things, they are really good for you.
Yeah, green leafy vegetables are great. So just summarizing this, so low bone mass and strength lead to increased fracture risk, and although bone mass is influenced by genetics, but nutrition and lifestyle can modify that risk. We can do that, yeah. And genetic factors can predispose individuals to bone loss even at a younger age. I don't mean really children, but as long as children are physically active and eating well, that's fine, but it can start as early as 20s. And this is what we are trying to do, is we are trying to find what are the genes which regulate bone mass and metabolism, and how they interact with diet. When I say interact with diet, I mean that how can diet help, and find out like how, if someone is at increased risk for osteoporosis or a bone disease, what can be done through diet to stop osteoporosis or detect the risk for osteoporosis even much before the fractures happen. Once they happen, of course, we have to take care, but can we do it much before? Early detection or early do something about it. I think I'll stop here, and please, I'm happy to discuss any questions.
Back to your research with the children, did you do it from an epidemiological standpoint, like diet recall and activity recall, and looked for those relationships?
So
there was not a treatment that was given?
No. This all was done within the population.
Okay.
But the physical activity was given by like this Fitbit type of thing. So we followed them up. And then nutrient was like a 7-day dietary question, they call it. So it was really a good one. And then physical activity, yeah. And then we also had DEXA, so bone mass and all.
My next question was, how did you measure it?
DEXA. So we had that, so yeah. And it's expensive, but that's why this cohort was really good one. So that is why we have bone mass all through DEXA. Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, you have a question. Sorry, I can't hear properly.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about sunshine and vitamin D production, as we were talking about earlier. And just for those of us that do have family history of skin cancer and this conversation about sunscreen, that, as Martin was saying about diet, there's the balance and really still wanting to make sure you are protected with sun exposure.
Yeah,
But if you're really being mindful about just getting 10 minutes a day of sun exposure, you really can improve your vitamin D production.
Yeah.
So I think
Or
a
maybe
lot of it's
supplements.
also just because
Oh, okay,
we're
sorry.
inside more in general. So
I
just being
can't-
mindful about getting outside
So,
I thought your talk was great, thank you.
okay, Martin wants to.
I just want to put in a plug for two things. The first one is, as was mentioned, we are conducting continuously all kinds of studies, and we have presented them before, so please, if you're interested, contact us. You'll find them on our website. So I think you should have mentioned what you're recruiting for currently.
Yeah,
But
but we have outside
we
flyers.
depend very much on the community helping us to do these studies, the very important part. The second is we are moving towards providing access to the community to certain measurements. We are looking at that as a fee-for-service opportunity, including DEXA. So if anybody's interested, again, please contact us. We can talk to you about it. We will announce these things specifically at a later presentation. I hope you keep coming to Appetite for Life.
Yeah, we really appreciate your support, and also we need support, and so, and our cards and all are outside, but anytime, any question, please let us know, and we have so many studies going on, so please feel free to check that. Okay, thank you so much.